Legally Yes, JellyRoll takes on JellyRoll. Plus, Prince Harry loses in court, and O.J. Simpson still owed $100 million to the Goldman family. We've got that plus so much more in Legally Yes. Hey everyone, and welcome to Legally Yes. I'm Christina. That's Neama Rahmani, President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Hi, Neama. Welcome back.
Thank you, Christina. I missed you last week.
I know, missed you last week, but Ron held down the court, so it was all good. But we have a lot of big news to get to. Moving on over to O.J. Simpson, because he reportedly still owed Ron Goldman's family more than $100 million at the time of his death. So he, as we know, he was acquitted of the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and Goldman, who was one of her close friends back in 1995. He was found liable in civil court 2 years later for more than $33 million for the murder. So an attorney for Ron's father, Fred Goldman, told the Daily Mail that the Goldman family is still chasing the payments, and Simpson's debt with interest is now over $100 million. Debt collection attorney David Cook said he plans to start the collection process at Simpson's estate. He added that he and his team of attorneys are just starting to track down the money owed to the Goldman family. Will the Goldman family ever see this money?
If they do, it'll probably be pennies on the dollar. And
yeah.
It's important to really talk about the difference between a criminal and a civil case here. We know, obviously, OJ was acquitted. He was found not guilty. But a civil case is different. A civil lawsuit is about money. And a lot of folks maybe don't realize that OJ Simpson actually lost the civil case. The Goldman sued him for wrongful death, and they won. Actually, 20 years ago, when I just graduated law school, more than 20 years ago, I worked for Dan Petrocelli. He's the attorney who represented the Goldmans in that civil lawsuit. So once you win a civil lawsuit, though, you get a judgment, and you have to go enforce that judgment. In some ways, people typically do that. They might garnish wages or seize and levy bank accounts. But OJ did a lot to try to avoid paying the Goldmans. He moved to some states where it was more difficult to enforce a judgment. He moved to Florida. I think ultimately he was residing in Nevada. And I don't think the Goldmans ever fully collected on this judgment. Now that OJ has passed, though, the Goldmans are just like any other creditor. They have to get in line at probate court, and it could be a credit card company. It could be some other type of creditor. They would all probably get a pro rata share as unsecured creditors during that probate.
So can they, like you said, they're going to kind of go after the estate. Can they go after his children to, now that he's not kind of moving from state to state and kind of like, on the run, I guess, from paying this, can they go after the children, the homes, things like that?
So the children are protected. The debt of a parent doesn't generally go to the child. There's some exceptions, like if the child is a co-signer or an obligor on the debt, but normally children aren't responsible for the debts of their parents, so the children are going to be okay. They could potentially go after the home, but usually, we talked about secured and unsecured debt. Usually a home will have a mortgage that's secured, so that's going to be first in line when you're talking about who gets paid. And usually, if you're looking at the hierarchy in a probate case, usually Uncle Sam, taxes get paid first, then secured creditors, then unsecured creditors. And unfortunately for the Goldmans, they're unsecured creditors here.
So is it typical in these big civil cases when a lot of money is awarded to somebody else that usually they don't see that type of cash?
It happens a lot. We've talked about some defamation cases here, obviously. Johnny Depp being the biggest one, but there are some big ones recently that some huge judgments were awarded, and I don't think the plaintiffs are going to collect anywhere near the judgment. One of them was Alex Jones, another was Rudy Giuliani. Just because you get a judgment doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get paid. You have to enforce it, and there's a legal term called judgment proof. So it doesn't matter how big a judgment is against you. If you have no assets, you don't have to pay it. And in the United States, we don't put people in prison for not being able to pay their debts. That was a big change that happened when folks came over from Great Britain.
Moving on over to this story is just funny to me. So Pennsylvania-based band JellyRoll has been performing at weddings and charity events in the Keystone State since 1980 and has held a trademark for their name since 2010. So the band is now suing country star JellyRoll to stop him from performing under the same name. A member of JellyRoll seeks injunctive relief against defendant Jason DeFord, aka JellyRoll, for service mark infringement, according to court documents. The band has had the trademark for nearly 15 years, most recently renewing the mark in 2019. So the suit alleges that by JellyRoll using the name, it has damaged the band's ability to get their name out, causing confusion in the marketplace. JellyRoll has said that his mother gave him the nickname as a child long before his career began, and he did not begin using the name as a performer until around 2010, the same time that JellyRoll initially obtained the trademark. So they sent the band sent JellyRoll a cease and desist letter in February to no avail. After several conversations for the suit, JellyRoll's lawyers inquired as to whether the defendant was really in competition with the plaintiff. So that's is the defendant really in competition with the plaintiff? JellyRoll is now a household country name. This is a smaller band. Who kind of wins out on this one?
Well, that's the big issue. It really comes down to the likelihood of confusion when you're analyzing any trademark case. So obviously, if you have the same type of music in the same geographic location, that may be a problem. But if you have two bands that really have nothing to do with one another and no one's going to be confused, you probably don't have a trademark case. But if the Pennsylvania band wants to expand and get into country music, that's something a judge may consider. And really, when it comes down to trademark law, in addition to the likelihood of confusion and what are the consumers going to think, really have to say, who used the mark first? Whoever used the mark first in commerce or used the name, they generally have the superior rights. And of course, if you register the mark, there's a presumption that you use the mark first. So there's a lot going on here, but I think JellyRoll, the country singer, probably is going to be okay because I don't see a situation where a lot of folks are really getting confused as to who's the band in Pennsylvania and who's the famous country singer.
Right. Who knew JellyRoll was such a popular name? Prince Harry lost his initial bid to appeal against a high court ruling dismissing his challenge over a decision to change the level of his personal security when he visits the UK. So Harry took legal action against the Home Office over the February 2022 decision of the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures that he should receive a different degree of taxpayer-funded protection when he is in the country. In a judgment in February, the High Court judge rejected the Duke's case and concluded their approach was not irrational nor procedurally unfair. His rep told us that the Duke of Sussex will be seeking permission from the Court of Appeal to challenge the decision of Mr. Justice Lane. We've been talking about this one for quite some time. Is this the final kind of, all right, you're not going to get the protection that you want?
Well, almost the final. The prince is going to appeal, and really a court of appeal is going to make that final decision. But I really don't understand the argument because Prince Harry apparently is no longer, at least officially, a member of the royal family, doesn't have any of those duties. So you would think that he doesn't get any of the benefits either. But maybe there's something in the UK law that I don't know about, but it does not strike me as a good legal case for the prince.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it seems to be, it's been going on since 2020. I don't think it's going to get anywhere. Like you said, he's not a working member of the royal family, and other members of the royal family don't get that police protection as well. So why should he get that as well? All right. Well, Neama, thank you for breaking down all these big stories for us this week and every week. Love to get your insight and expertise.
Of course, Christina. See you next week.
All right, see you next week.